Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
American soccer fans, welcome to episode 57 of the Stars and Stripes FC podcast. Donald Wine here, manager of Stars and Stripes FC, your source for all things U.S. national teams, the players that comprise them, and everything else surrounding the game of soccer in America. This episode is going to be a fun one. You're probably going to laugh. I hope you do, because I definitely laughed throughout this entire interview with Alexis Guerreros and Christian Polanco of the Cooligans, who were so kind to take some time out of their schedules to join me and talk about American soccer, talk about their show, talk about pizza, jerseys. We talk about just about everything for two guys who are incredibly talented comedians that kind of started. They linked up together and they were able to form the Cooligans. They've been on tour. They have a TV show, they have a podcast, and really are just involved in this space called soccer, but have created their lane of funny, and combining the funny with the soccer is something that is very, very rare. And so I asked them about that as well. So again, the Cooligans, their show airs on Thursdays at 7 p.m. on Fubo Sports Network, but you get to listen to them here on episode 57. So here it is, my interview that I just completed a couple moments ago with Alexis Guerreros and Christian Polanco. They are the Cooligans. So as I mentioned, we have a wonderful interview today. I am so pleased to be joined by two awesome, hilarious guys. They have their own TV show that airs Thursdays at 7 p.m. on Fubo Sports Network. They have their own podcast. They're comedians. They do it all. Alexis Guerreros and Christian Polanco together. They are the Cooligans. And my guys, it's good to see you both. It's been a minute, but welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us, man. Yeah, we're huge fans of you. Yeah, the last time we saw you, I believe, was at the Women's World Cup send-off game at Red Bull Arena, and I think that might have been the first time we met as well, if I'm not mistaken. But you were one of those people that was like, you're the guy on Twitter who I see on camera at every single U.S. men's and women's national team game, and I have a lot of questions on how you do all of this.
Yeah, man. The last time I saw Donald was holding up a homemade trophy at every national team game.
It wasn't even mine. I just borrow them from people, and then all of a sudden the camera shows up. It's funny how that works.
How much are you paying these camera people to find you in the audience?
I don't pay them anything. They should be paying me for this, premeditated face that I have on. That's made for podcasts.
When I see Donald, ratings go up, baby.
But again, look, see, this is exactly what we're talking about. You guys are hilarious. I want to start by how you got to this point where you both are right now. How did a kid from Brooklyn and a kid from Newark link up to form the Cooligans? For those listeners who are out there who just maybe learn about you, how did you get to this point?
A lot of bribes. A lot of blackmail.
Okay, so typical FIFA stuff. All right,
Oh yeah, we're used to that.
We learned from watching you, Sep. Christian, has this ever happened on the show? Christian and I are both stand-up comedians, professional stand-up comedians for, at this point, 12, 13 years. Are we counting the pandemic year? 12, 13 years. And did a lot of Zooms during that year. But yeah, we just saw each other on the scene, and then we kind of figured out we both like soccer, and I had a different podcast, he had a different podcast, and we decided to do an episode that was kind of like together, like we did each other's podcast at the same time and shared it on both platforms. And that was the first time that we had worked together. And I've told the story a million times, but when I first met Christian, I didn't like him. I thought he was a little pompous. Apparently I was projecting because it's everything I am. I thought it was a little bit much. But very quickly we kind of formed a friendship, and I think what we realized is we're so different that it works really well. So when NYCFC started, I said, hey, season tickets are real cheap. Come stand next to me. So we both got tickets there. We made people around us laugh, and I said to Christian, I'm like, I mean, if we could make people around us laugh, we could probably do this on like video or on a podcast. We did a couple videos. We started doing the podcast, and that's when it took off from there. The podcast was the first thing that really sort of found us a fan base or a group of people that liked what we were doing. And we just kept going from there. And, 2 years ago became a TV show, and here we are. And finally, after all that hard work, you reached out. It took a lot. But,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add to that is, as far as how we got here, I mean, I think the constant grind of the stand-up comedy scene, I mean, we've been doing that for years. We were doing that essentially about 6 years before Cooligans was even an idea. And that helped us cut our teeth in an industry that is where we got to understand the entertainment world, and we got to understand just how to do a podcast, how to be funny for long stretches of time, and then
how to keep going when nobody appreciates you.
Pretty much. And then we're just trying to bring that into the soccer space, which already consists of so many people who contribute so much into this American soccer, gumbo, and don't always ask for anything in return. And I think it was that drive of like we were making no money for 5 years, and then finally something happened. So that dedication helped us persist and get to where we are now.
So speaking of the dedication, right? Like I think we were talking about the Women's World Cup and how we met at the send-off, but it was actually 2018. And I don't know if you guys remember this. In Richmond, you guys were doing a World Cup comedy tour. And I was at the Richmond show representing AO.
Okay.
We did the little segment with the goalkeepers with Taylor and Dale from the Total Soccer Show. Shouts to those guys. But how you obviously you're good friends with them, and you've become friends with a lot of other people in this space. But I want to ask you guys, how difficult is it to combine soccer and the funny? You guys have kind of carved out a lane where you can do that, and I know how hard it is to keep people laughing and keep people also educated on the game at the same time. So how do you do it?
I think for what we decided, and I think Total Soccer Show is a great example. And, obviously rest in peace to Daryl Grove, a good friend of ours. But I think when we decided to start doing a podcast, Christian and I sat down and talked about what is it that we could bring to the table? And I think it's very evident that we're not going to be, Total Soccer Show was an example of here's two people that are doing it at a really good job. There are a lot of facts and some jokes. So Christian and I decided we're not going to have no facts and all jokes. And I think, and honestly, that's kind of how we go after it. We decide, you know what? We're not going to focus on, always being able to, and I did an episode of Total Soccer Show where we did where we rewatched the match, and they were like, wow, you guys, both of you actually do know what you're talking about when it, so of course, but for the show, what we do best is be funny. So we're just going to be as funny as possible. And we hope, Christian puts it in a great way. We don't know that we could turn comedy fans into soccer fans, but we definitely know we could find comedy fans that are soccer fans. And then maybe we could start to bridge those worlds together. And that's kind of what we've hoped to achieve. I don't know if we've done that yet or if we're on our way, but that's kind of what we've been going after.
Yeah. And the premise or the idea when we first started wasn't we're going to be these comics in this space because nobody's doing it's literally there was none of that planned at all. I think after doing this for a couple years, we started realizing that there really isn't that merger of comedians and soccer, right? Where we've interviewed at this point hundreds of players, and I'll ask a lot of them. I said, have you ever met a comedian? Literally ever. It could be one of the most famous players you ever known. Just have you ever met one? And they're like, oh, you know what? I don't think so. I don't think I've ever met a comedian. And that's so surreal because every other athlete in almost every other sport has there's Kevin Hart is doing stuff with the Olympics. Snoop Dogg's doing they're doing stuff together. The NBA, the All-Star game has comedians play in the celebrity game and things like that. And there isn't that connection. And I think we're trying to do that. It'd be easier if we were just like super famous comedians, and more people would be aware. But I think what's happening, even in the comedy world, there's more comedians. When we started the podcast, our friends, our close friends were like, what are you wasting your time for talking about soccer? Who watches soccer? Nobody cares about that sport. And now comedians are like, yo, I saw this new MLS team. Yo, can you help me get tickets? Or do you know how? Stuff like that. I'm like, all right, so the tide is kind of turning. Maybe we won't be the comedians that completely help soccer skyrocket to the moon, but I feel like how everybody is and I feel this a lot when we go to the ISC meetings. We have been lucky to perform in the Independent Supporters Council, and when we're in that room and you see how everyone is coming together to basically volunteer and try to help grow the sport, that's kind of what I feel like we're doing. We're just using our skills to help propel the sport, and put it in a better light.
And on the comedy side, like, who are your inspirations? Like, if someone's like, hey, I've never heard the Cooligans perform stand up, or listen to their show or whatever, what kind of inspirations do you take from the comedy side and apply to this kind of new lane that you guys have created?
I mean, I don't really think there are many. I'm just trying to think of like comedians that have been able to bridge the gap into sports, and there aren't. I mean, personally, there was when I was a kid, I saw a repeat of a show on Comedy Central, a guy by the name of Dom Irrera, who he was like, he kind of, I don't know if it was just that episode, but he was like messing with someone who played with the Steelers. And I just remember being like, this guy could murder this comedian. Dom Irrera has always looked like a little old man. And he's just making this guy laugh. And it's supposed to be about sports, and it very clearly isn't, but it's also not like a prank show. Like, the guy knew this wasn't going to be about sports. And I think that probably is the only thing I can ever think of that's kind of close to what we hope to achieve. I think the video we did with NYCFC recently, where we're like, going over, because we're big soccer fans, so we're really interested as to what goes through the player's mind when they have this incredible free kick and blah blah blah. But the questions I'm going to ask are different than someone who played for so many years and then maybe had like a bad knee injury and then got into media. Like, they have a certain understanding. They're not going to ask questions from the same place a fan does who's never played the sport at that level. So I'm like, who negotiates, who gets to do the free kick? Like, I'm asking questions from someone who's never done it before. And because I'm a comedian, I'm trying to be as funny as possible. And I think that kind of gives you a good example of what Chris and I have been sort of begging for 6 years to achieve, which is just put us in a room with players. Trust us, it'll be funny, because we don't know what we're talking about, and we're going to be kind of dumb, and it's going to be funny in a funny way, obviously.
Yeah, and it's just cool to see. I mean, it's great getting to be the arbiter of that and getting to be like interacting with those players. But even for me, even when I'm watching it back, I'm like, this is great. I've never seen soccer players like interact with comedians this way. And the cool thing about the Cooligans is that the Cooligans could only exist in the United States. There's no way we could be in England and have the level of access. It is the Wild West out here. This is why like American soccer fans, maybe, I don't know exactly, if they may not know how short the degrees of separation you are to your favorite player. You could see them either walking in the street. You can try to go to training. You could see them leaving the stadium. They'll take pictures. It is a completely different world out in the football mad countries. So that is what is like the kind of exciting thing that we like, the fact that not only can we bring our, like, as stand-up comedians, like, I mean, my favorite comedian was like, George Carlin, and current, like, it's like John Mulaney and Sarah Silverman. Like, I like wordy comedians, Chris Rock, like clever, Chappelle. Like, that is where my like comedic inspiration comes from. But when Alexis and I work together, the dynamic is ridiculous. We're silly people, like it's like comedians in a green room, and we get to talk about soccer. It's like it's so fun, and we notice it the most, especially when we're on Twitch, because like people are interacting with us live, and it's like, man, like there is an overlap. There's of like soccer fans, comedy fans, and people who want to be involved in seeing the sport grow, and that's why I appreciate it a little bit differently than simply, if someone's like a fan of comedy, they're like, oh, I like those jokes you told, cool. But then if somebody's like, oh, I'm a fan of the Cooligans, it's like you are a fan of the fact that we're funny, but you're also like, oh, I'm in this fight with you to help grow the game.
Right. And by the way, everyone listening, I also don't know what arbiter means, so don't feel bad.
So I mentioned you guys are carving out your own lane. It's starting to be duplicated. I don't know if you know this, but El Chiringuito the last couple of weeks has been trying to match you guys with their spice. So you gotta keep going. Make sure you're always one level up on them.
That's it.
One thing that you're not talking about is the number one story in the soccer world. Of course, I'm talking about the U.S.
Josh Sargent going to Norwich.
Going to Norwich, U.S. men's national team winning 2 continental championships, both over Mexico. For you guys, you obviously like, American soccer. You both are NYC fans. You watch MLS for all its flaws, and you follow them, the national teams. What about this summer has you excited the most about the men's national team as we get towards World Cup qualifying? Is it the players, or is it just, again, the spice that you've kind of seen in some of these games that they play?
It's so funny. Like when Cooligans, before we had a TV show, we were a podcast, we were building, and that we started to see like a lot of momentum. And we got invited. Christian couldn't go, but we got invited to be a part of like a watch party for the match against Trinidad and Tobago, where we obviously lost and didn't qualify for the World Cup. But if people remember, the lead up to that match was 1,000 things have to go wrong for us to lose. So it's going to be a party, right? And I walk in moments. I get there a little late. I walk in moments after the Omar Gonzalez own goal. And the mood is so weird. And I was listening to it in the car on the way there. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is going great. And like literally the only thing I missed was his own goal. And the mood was really sad. And I remember, obviously, we lose, obviously don't qualify. I'm driving home, like my eyes, I'm not blinking. I'm like staring forward, like, oh my God, is Cooligans done? Is like, are people just going to turn off on soccer because of this? And all of these negative thoughts are going through my head of like, yo, this could be it. From that to where we are now, beating Mexico twice in 2 finals in the same summer. Is just, I mean, we're I think 8th or 9th in the world right now.
10th as of this morning, yeah.
10th.
Apparently they kept Mexico ahead of us, but we know the score.
Who knows?
We know.
Yeah.
We know what's up.
Jeez, we know both scores. I mean, but still, just to be in the top 10, to be where we are, to where we were, and even where we are, at that time, even going into the pandemic, we weren't in the same place that we are now. Christian and I are like, it seems like we're getting more and more opportunities, and that was a concerted effort to say, like, as soon as the pandemic started, like, people are going to be in a really bad place. We need to give out as much content as possible and make sure people have some level of entertainment during this. And like, we might have burned the candle at both ends, but at least people connected with us. Like, to see where we are now and where the men's national team is now, and things are starting to get better. Nothing's perfect, but there's a hope. A lot of these kids are young. That, to me, is like the fact that like we could see some of these players blossom for the next 6, 7, 8 years. If we might have 2 World Cup cycles with these players really fully in their prime. I want to see where Weston McKennie's going to end up. I want to see where Tyler Adams is going to end up. Like, all these things are just so exciting that, to me, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, it is exciting just because I remember after we won the Nations League match, somebody was talking to me like at a Sunday League game, and they were like, for the Gold Cup final, and I was like, man, for whatever reason, I just feel like the U.S. is gonna win. I know this is not the ace squad, but I don't know why I have this confidence, but I feel like it's a real possibility. And even watching both of those matches, the confidence that the U.S. men played with, the kind of like fear that Mexico played with a little bit too, making those mistakes that they usually just do not make. I mean, it's been a battle for 40 years, or, that we've been actually like really paying attention to it. And there's a level of, working in the space now and being a fan, there is such a deep-rooted connection now that we've spoken to so many players. We've befriended players on the national teams that it's like it feels different than, when you see an Instagram story or post about a win or a loss. I'm like, let's go. I feel like it's like such a it's just a more deeply personal, and it's something that I wish I was, for a lot of people, and we got to talk to Landon Donovan about this, but that Algeria goal, I told him this. I said that goal knocked a soccer consciousness into me. Like, I knew I enjoyed the game. I played FIFA and I watched I used to watch World Cups or whatever. But that goal was what I literally was jumping on my bed celebrating that goal. And I'm like, I was by myself. I don't know why nothing like that had happened prior. So those moments, the fact that I get to kind of almost live them every day on being in soccer Twitter and arguing with people, pro-rel this, and, why is Berhalter starting this, whatever. Like, I'm like, as frustrating as it is, I'm like, I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, I could just tell just by your answers, like, how emotionally invested you are. Like, as fans, we're emotionally invested. So as a media person, someone who's in media, does TV, does podcasts, you guys still have that emotion in there. And I think that is what resonates about your show, is that you're able to express that in a fun, obviously in a lane that's different than everyone else in a funny way, but you're still able to resonate that. So having said that, I want to talk about the women for a second, because this is the only country on earth where getting bronze apparently is a failure, right? Like, we go for gold and we end up bronze. Everywhere else, they're like, bronze, awesome. Here we have to ask, what do you think went wrong for the women's national team, and where do they go from here? So I ask you guys, what do you feel like should be next for the women's national team? We get bronze. We're still the defending 2-time World Cup champs, but what needs to happen from here to defend that trophy in a couple of years?
I think I struggle with the idea of like wanting to see some fresher blood and some younger players. And I think one of the things that America does incredibly well on the women's side is develop some really incredible players. And there's some really fun and exciting, Midge Purce comes to mind right away. Just fun, exciting young players that I would love to see start to get more of an opportunity, because the last thing I want to see is them not get those opportunities to kind of like learn on the job a little bit and learn what these pressure moments are. But at the same time, I don't ever want to see Megan Rapinoe not playing for the women's national team. I don't ever want to see, like Ali Krieger, when she got back in, was such a big moment for us, because it was so funny when we saw her at the women's national team media day before the World Cup. She was like, it was because of you guys, because we had joked around. We're like, yo, I'm telling you, you're going to make it. And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm telling you, like, we would say, like, yo, you're going to make it. So she joked around and said it was because of us. Like, those things, like, it's so great to see these players that have done so incredibly well. But I do think there may be the opportunity to start to bring in some fresher players and fresher ideas. What are the kids doing? Let's get them in here. A couple TikTok dances. What are we doing?
I think, I look, this is what I would like to see for the women's national team, and how the women's national team is sort of discussed, and how women's soccer is discussed. And I think what NWSL is doing, Women's Super League, I like that we are having these conversations, and it's almost it's like a little bit challenging to be critical of women's soccer players in the same degree that the men are criticized, and because it would feel a little bit ridiculous sometimes, because like given the pay disparity and all these other, it's like beating a dead horse. Like, why are you criticizing us on top of the fact that it's already challenging for us to even just do the job? But when it comes to the women's national team being the best in the world, they are open for a little bit more criticism, and Vlatko's open for more criticism. And I think from a tactical perspective, Vlatko got things up, a lot. I think he got it wrong. I think he thought it kind of like, this is where I think, like, we've seen comments from from players about like Jill Ellis and basically saying like it doesn't matter who's coaching. These players are so good they could have won a World Cup or they could have won the Olympics. But I think maybe a World Cup is a little bit different. But the Olympics in particular, the shorter rest, I think the having the more veteran players, which is great for experience, but you just need younger players to play in that specific tournament. I think that specific tournament is not built for the younger player. For the older player. And I think
with the rest in the turnaround.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think with that in mind, I think Vlatko kind of had it wrong with some of the lineups, with some of the players that he called in. It would have been great to see Lynn Williams play more. Would have been great, and they were the alternates that got to play. It would have been great for Casey Kruger to play more as well. So things like that, I think Vlatko is now has that shorter leash. I mean, we have to especially with how great Sweden played. And how everybody played us great, and it's like, we're just not used to that, and so that having that kind of putting his feet to the fire, and to one, obviously play better in these tournaments, play better in these friendlies. I'm hoping that they play more European teams. Sorry if I'm going on for so long, but it's like
you're good.
I'm thinking about all this stuff. Like if we are going to be the best, you have to be criticized as the best teams, and you have to maintain that standard.
Again, this is the only country in the world where a coach comes in, literally goes undefeated for like 2 years, loses one game, and we're like, nah, he's on the hot seat now. He's got to go.
Told you it was trash.
Yeah, got to redo it, throw it all out, start all over.
Yeah,
build from scratch. But I think that's kind of the crossroads that we're at with the women's national team is we want them to still be good, but there still needs to be some of that turnover, some of those changes that need to be made to keep it fresh, as you guys say, and make it so that number one stays number one all the way. Like we don't want to be number two. If not first, you're last, that sort of thing. But I think they have a lot of questions that need to be answered over the next few months. It'll be interesting to see how they do that. I did want to transition back to the show for the last couple of questions. You guys mentioned a bunch of players that you've interviewed, a bunch of people that you've interviewed on your show. Give me a couple of the good ones. Like, which ones where you're like, after you were done, you're like, wow, that was awesome. I can't believe we just got to interview this person and they were awesome.
I think the first one that really shocked us was probably Ali Krieger. She was so funnier than some of the comics we've had on the show. Just had like a really big personality. And I think it's something that we've talked about before, but it seems like the women's players have such bigger personality than the men's players. And I don't know if it's because the men's players maybe, I don't know, maybe they come in with like a different idea of what media is, and the women's players are just like, hey, we let's show that we're, have great personalities or whatever, so more people pay attention to the sport. For whatever reason. They're just absolutely incredible. So I would say Ali Krieger's probably the first one. I mean, look, getting to talk to David Beckham was like a huge thing. Landon Donovan, Christian Nearly, like you could see the emotion of him being able to tell like the Algeria story. And we had just talked to Landon about how 1 million people tell him their Algeria story. We're like, well, we're gonna get 2 more. Okay?
And now you got 1 million too. Yeah.
Yeah, buckle up, buddy. This is why we brought you here. Like those types of things, like we never, even players saying like, oh, it's about time you asked me to be on the show. And we're like, what? You know who we are?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff just never gets old.
Yeah. I mean, there's too many to count at this point. You pretty much we had Megan Rapinoe on recently, and to get
that was a good one.
Yeah, to get to speak to your heroes, and then also they're like, "Oh, you guys are great," and I know you guys. I'm like, "What?" That part of it is nuts.
It's all like whenever there's like a big player, like our instinct is to be like, "Hey, I'm really sorry."
You have to do this.
That you took time out of your day.
Yeah, we're like, you could be talking to sponsors or something. Like we never think of ourselves like that. But sorry, you were saying?
Yeah. I mean, we've had a bunch of amazing. We had like Roy Wood Jr. From the Daily Show on, he's a Houston Dynamo fan. So we're like always looking for those people who are like from other other avenues that are into the game. Like we always say, our show is a comedy show first before it's a soccer show. So if you're not laughing, we're obviously doing our job wrong. And I mean, look, there's the fact that we've gotten to speak to the people that we've had the opportunity to is an absolute dream. We are incredibly lucky. I'm glad that it took a long time to get to this point because there was a lot of time for when we started. People are like, two comics talking about soccer. What are you gonna make fun of me? Like everybody was really skeptical. And now it's gotten to the point where people just like understand what this is about. That we're not, when like my mindset, like I always wanted to like write for SNL. That was like my dream, right? And or like to write for a late night show, and that's kind of how I approach our show. We're like, why can't there be a late night show about soccer? And the guests come on and they talk to the host about, and it's not about when soccer players are on Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel. Everybody's named Jimmy at night for some reason. But when they're on these shows, it is. They're talking to them like they're these mystical figures, like they don't even really understand the game. And when Zlatan was on Kimmel, it's like he's like asking him like he's like this mythical figure, and not really talking about like, well, how are you gonna handle Toronto FC next week? You know what I mean? Like right. That would be just like a dope experience as well, because I think the player will feel much more open and welcome, and that the person this media figure they're talking to like really understands them.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Alexis, I know you are the connoisseur of the pizza, and you talk about pizza. You even famously said, "Don't tell me your favorite joint because I will have a review for it, and you're not going to like it." So I'm going to ask you the difficult question of, I know you're from Newark. I know you got some slices there, but what's the best one that you've had outside of New York, New Jersey? Because I know that's I know that's your favorite, but which one's the best outside? And there is a right answer to this.
Well, it's my favorite because it's the only place to find consistently great pizza. Sorry, everybody. That's why I like this area. We know what we're doing. You said there's a right answer, so now I'm interested as to what you think. But I would say the best. So it used to be different. Now I would say the best slice I've ever had outside of the New York, New Jersey area would probably be Apollonia's in Los Angeles. Justin, who owns it, absolutely incredible. Christian, I took Christian there when we were in LA. Good. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. There's some other great ones like, Scotty's up in Portland, Pizza Show's up in Portland, Mia something. I can't remember the name in San Antonio. Absolutely incredible slices. But yeah, Apollonia, if it was in New York, it'd be top 5 in New York. It might even be top 4.
I've actually been there, so that's a good shout. I know our LA people appreciate that because people talk about how they have trash pizza, but they have some good pizza.
Well, the thing is, they mostly have trash pizza. Let's not forget.
Right.
Everywhere else is garbage. But there's like 2 or 3. There's like 2 or 3 in LA that are getting pretty good.
Okay, cool. And the last one I have is about the swag.
Said there's the right answer. Where were you?
So my right answer. I'm from Detroit. So Detroit style pizza to me is the greatest pizza on earth. Buddies, Jets are always great. But I will say this: in New York, there is a place that I don't know if you've been to. It's called Lions, Tigers, and Squares. Is the closest to Detroit style pizza that I have had outside Detroit. So next time you're in Chelsea Midtown,
I know Lions, Tigers, and Squares. Right? They're the owners of Artichoke Pizza, which is famous in New York.
Yeah. So shouts to them as well, because every time I come through, I try to get a slice. But I'm gonna end with this. You guys, obviously, when you are on the show, you guys always get a lot of jersey swag. You get a lot of other swag. I see Christian, for those who are listening, is wearing the Megan Reyes shirt, the more female Black, Latinx, indigenous people in sports, which is always a good shirt. You always like to rock the jerseys, though. What's your favorite one that you've gotten this year? I know you've gotten a ton, and I've seen your shows or your clips where you have them. What's one of the ones that you're like, man, I got this, and I was excited. I had to put it on like right there on the show.
For me, So I mean, for me, it's a recent one. So my family's from the Dominican Republic, from Santiago, and there's a league, a soccer league that started there 7 years ago, the La Liga Dominicana de Fútbol, and I had gone there, Cibao FC. played in a CONCACAF Champions League match against Chivas. So I went to DR. I got to visit my family. I brought my girlfriend, and we got to watch soccer in the Dominican Republic. It was so surreal. So I bought a kit. I started rocking it on the show, and then they started. They saw it, and they were communicating with me and everything. And they just sent me the new kit. So there it is. Alexis holding it up. So that is, that there's just another connection. We are obviously American soccer fans, but to connect with the Caribbean and where, especially where our heritage and where our families are from. Alexis is Cuban, and for them, Dominicans don't care about soccer. Like, we all know that. It's a baseball country.
Baseball, yeah.
So for them, me communicating with them and them sending us, they sent us kits and kind of the same exact thing that we're talking about. They're fighting so hard to make the sport relevant in a country where baseball, it's a baseball mad country. And so that part of it, I'm like, there's a little bit of a connection to like where my family's from, where my grandparents are. And to unbox that kit on the show meant a lot to me.
Yeah, that's dope. That's really, I remember seeing the clips of that in the show when you did that. And again, the thing about you guys, you guys show your emotion on the show, which is not something a lot of people do, whether it be good or bad.
Yeah. I mean, Alexi Lawless was crying on TV the other day, so
yeah, it's very rare. But
like, how vulnerable he is.
Yeah, right. But you could tell how that meant a lot to you to get that jersey and receive it and be able to wear it. So that was pretty cool. Alexis?
Yeah, I purchased a Cuban national team player that I found, a jersey that I found. But of all the kits that I get, like it's so funny. Like, people will send us kits, and like some of them are like, this is like a conceptual kit or whatever. But like, every once in a while we get stuff like this, and this is just, it's really hard for me to pick like a kid I love because I just love kids so much. Like, my collection is so big. My wife is just like, please do something. But Common Goal sent this one.
Oh,
and
man.
It's just so cool, like the concept, and shouts to Avery Dennison and Soccer Bible and Common Goal for sending us this kit. But like the kits that mean something, like the idea of when we got into soccer, we obviously were fans of the sport and we understand the reach, but you don't really understand, like, American sports. There's nothing that compares to what being a soccer fan actually means. Like, it's about helping people, and it's about, like, it really, like, the term community is way overused, but it really is about, like, how do you help the other people that also like this sport, or how can this sport make a positive change? Opening pitches on the sideline, like the Black Players for Change are doing, and things like that. Like, that kind of connection, just, it's so hard. Unless you've ever cared about soccer for like 1 minute, you'll just never, like, I could talk to an NFL fan for days and they just won't get it until they see it for themselves. So to see kits like that are coming out that are like, hey, we know you guys love wearing kits, we're going to make one that's going to help people. It's like, yes, that's what we should all be doing. So stuff like that, I think, really hits me at a moment where I'm like, you know what, maybe we picked a sport that, is building way slower than we expected, and it's really hard to make a career in, and, all these things, but at the end of the day, like, we're going to leave having made a positive influence on somebody, and I think that at the end of the day, that whole idea of, like, leave the country or the planet a little better than when you got here, that I feel like soccer does do that. And kits like that, I wear them as much as possible because I want people to ask me, like, hey, what is that? And then I can have that conversation with them. Yeah.
Common Goal is definitely something. I actually serve on the Anti-Racist Project steering committee. So
great.
I need to get one of those for myself to add to my expanding collection. But I think the one thing that you hit on is the community aspect. And you guys are certainly a big part of that community. And we appreciate you. So Alexis Guerreros, Christian Polanco, they are the Cooligans. Again, their show is on Thursdays, 7 p.m. on Fubo Sports Network. Their next one is tonight as we record on August 12th. So follow them both individually on Twitter, collectively at Soccer Cooligans. So guys, truly appreciate you coming on the show. I hope to see you guys really soon. We have some World Cup qualifiers coming up. You guys are always welcome to come rock with me.
Yes.
Party with me. You know how I get down. So if you guys are in the
area,
we'll be at
some of them.
Nashville.
We'll be at, yeah.
Here we go. We'll see you there.
Detroit pizza on you, baby.
Oh yes. Well, we had to go to Detroit today. I got to take you to a good spot. And that will do it for episode 57 of the Stars and Stripes FC podcast. Again, I want to thank Alexis and Christian of the Cooligans for joining me. Totally appreciate them for taking the time and vibing with me about everything U.S. soccer, jersey swag, pizza related, and just providing the funny once again. A reminder, you can check them out on the Fubo Sports Network, and they also have a podcast feed as well. Go ahead and subscribe to that. As always, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. We're going to try and get more guests on here. Probably won't be as funny as the Cooligans, but we'll talk about soccer in another way. But rates and reviews are awesome. They really help. So 5 stars if you like what you're hearing. For any topic suggestions or questions, drop me a line at ssfcpodcast@gmail.com. We will talk to you next time. Take care.